Jupiter, the planet of optimism, growth, and abundance, stations retrograde at 4:38 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, July 28th. And until November 23rd, we will be asked to rethink our progress, look at the bigger picture, and do some course correction. Are you ready? Let's take a closer look and break it down for all 12 signs. My name is Anastasia. I'm a traditional Western astrologer specializing in relationship, natal, and predictive astrology. If you'd like to book a reading with me and if you'd like to work with me, check out the links down below. I am currently running a Leo season special, which means every Leo gets 20% off natal and solar return readings. There are coupon codes down there as well. And if you're new to my channel, please subscribe, leave me a comment or a like. I really appreciate that, and it helps my channel grow and helps me bring you more exciting content. So, Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto are already retrograde. Now Jupiter joins the lineup, a lot of retrograde energy, which means that we are slowing it down, right? Like we're becoming more introspective. We're dealing with things on a personal versus social, visible level. Jupiter, what is Jupiter? Jupiter is the greater benefic in astrology, meaning that it brings good things. It's kind of like the green light, the go-ahead, the yes, very different from Saturn. It's the planet of faith. With Jupiter, we sort of believe that things will get better. Wherever Jupiter is placed in our chart, whatever sign it's placed, it gets that energy of like things will improve. We know, right? Regardless of the proof sometimes. It is connected to growth. So it describes how we grow in life, what is important to us. Currently by transit, Jupiter is in Aries, which means that from May 10th until July 28th, with Jupiter being direct, we may have focused a lot on taking action in the areas that we don't necessarily feel comfortable in. We may have started new things. We may have felt comfortable, or we sort of felt like the inner pull to act courageously. The more action we take, the more, we go into the new territory, kind of like Aries does. Aries likes to prove it themselves, right? Like Aries people. And because Jupiter is sort of connected, like it's the outer planet, not really the outer planet, but it's not like Venus, Mercury, Mars, planets that represent more visible sides of us. Jupiter tends to deal more with like social matters. It's still visible, but it's less like, if Venus is your immediate desires, your hunger, your attraction, Mars is like your anger. Jupiter deals more with things that you pursue on a social level, like how do you want to be seen, what impact you want to leave on the world, what do you believe, what are your guiding principles, morals. So it's sort of like things that are less immediate. So Jupiterian projects tend to be more long-term and tend to be more society-oriented. So like I said, Jupiter being in Aries is kind of like gung-ho about progress. Aries is a very masculine, fiery energy, very impulsive, impatient. So if you felt excitement over certain projects, I have definitely felt excitement over certain business projects. I'm actually going to start selling things soon, and they will carry planetary magic properties. So I will create them at a specific moment, electing like the perfect moment, adding a ritual, and then whenever you create an object at a moment of your choosing, you put the qualities of that moment into the object. So, I'm going to start kind of like expanding my business to do more of that. And you can follow my progress on Instagram, and you can also check out my website for my offerings. But back to Jupiter. Sorry for this shameless plug. But so Jupiter in Aries may have brought new things into your life, and likely some of them may have felt like too fast, too soon, right? So now maybe you bit more than you can chew, maybe you have overwhelmed yourself, overloaded yourself, or sort of like sped up through certain steps. And now when Jupiter goes retrograde, it's actually the time to rethink those things. Where have you gone too far? What else needs to be done? You know, if Jupiter is good luck, when Jupiter goes retrograde, you may feel some of that good luck draining away, where you're not just going off of faith and optimism and just like joy of taking action. You're called to be more retrospective, introspective. So you're asked to think carefully about things, think carefully about your selection and like selection of projects that you're working on and sort of, you know, commitments. You're not just going off of luck, you're going off of your knowledge and experiments and experiential knowledge. Jupiter here is more Saturnian. Saturn is more like not yet, slow down, takes slow, patient steps. And it's actually whenever Jupiter goes retrograde, you know, retrograde is the phenomenon perceived from Earth where we think that the planet is moving backwards. Well, in reality, it doesn't, but to us, it does. So it tends to reflect our state of mind in which we are more introspective, in which we are encouraged to go back. And maybe you're naturally, you know, the planet's sort of like a weather report that tells you what is the weather like here on Earth and what needs to be done. So it's more Saturnian. It's more about like take slow steps, be patient. Will things work out? What needs to be fixed? What needs to be changed? What needs to be adapted, right? Like sticking with my example of selling things, maybe I make the first batch and I realize that things need to be shuffled around, or maybe things like, you know, like kind of learning as you go and taking it slow, not necessarily rushing, not necessarily pushing yourself. It's not a bad thing. Sometimes Jupiter going retrograde can actually take certain things that you don't need out of your life, and maybe in the moment you feel like you will miss them, but in reality you're not necessarily going to miss them. You know, if Jupiter brings like expansion, if you say, let's say you have some inflammation in your body and you are an Aries rising, Jupiter going retrograde in your first house can actually be great for slowing the inflammation, slowing the growth, and sort of like leaving only the important things. But yeah, learning to be patient is important, especially with Jupiter in Aries. Watch out for the tendency to sort of like push ahead and just try to get things done regardless. You will benefit more if you take it easy, and if you will do some course correction, right? Like learn from the mistakes, learn from delays, don't use them, don't get frustrated, try to see what's the message here. Like if you are not getting the results you want immediately, doesn't mean you will never get them. A lot of times Jupiter going retrograde, like any planet going retrograde, can take away some of the stuff that you have gotten with Jupiter being direct. Like let's say Jupiter is in your house of money for Pisces rising, right? Jupiter going retrograde might mean that you have to pay money to someone. That means that you have to give some of that money back. Maybe you have to make a sudden purchase. But then as Jupiter later stations direct, this can actually be, you might get some of that money back, or you might see the results of spendings of the money that you spend. Another thing Jupiter deals with is kind of larger picture. So looking at things from the larger perspective, like maybe you took a project because it seemed exciting to you, but do you have the time to handle it? Maybe you've gotten in a relationship because it seemed wonderful to you, but now you look at the fact that you have different morals than the other person, or you have very different goals. Because it's a more introspective period, you're sort of less focused on, like I said, on the outward success, and more so encouraged to do inner development. Look at what you believe in, look at what makes you happy, what makes you feel secure, and try to balance your progress with that inner growth. You may go through some tests of your progress, right? Like I mentioned, maybe things being taken away from you, maybe there's certain delays. Maybe you just even feel less enthusiastic, less excited about things, and Jupiter being retrograde is not the time to give up on things at all, which, you know, maybe that Aries energy might just sort of ask you to, like, let's move on, new project, this is not working. Don't give up, try to be patient, try to take it one step at a time. You're not supposed to get quick results. You're not supposed to necessarily receive things that you think you need. Maybe you're supposed to get things that Jupiter wants for you. And as far as faith is concerned, perhaps you can also benefit at this time, and it's a 4 months period, right? Like, we start on July 28th and it goes until November 23rd. You can benefit from doing research. You can benefit from getting in touch with teachers, mentors, questioning things, traveling sometimes to learn new things, or like learn more about the things that you're trying to accomplish in life. And just trying to pay attention, trying to take it easy. It's interesting. Let me know what are these projects that Jupiter and Aries has brought in your life, starting from like May 10th. Of course, whichever house Jupiter is in your chart, that's where you would look at those things. Like, you know, Libra rising, for me, it's the house of marriage, relationships, and business. So definitely have seen some new business ideas, as I mentioned to you. And finally, one other thing, you can expect past opportunities coming to you, past beliefs, past ideas. Sometimes people, like if it's Jupiter in the 11th house for Gemini rising, maybe there's certain friendships or mentors or people who are influential on your life, they can come back. Jupiter moves from 8 degrees Aries into 28 degrees Pisces, so it's not just one sign retrograde. We're actually going to go from Aries into Pisces. And so it's an interesting shift because we're going from this energy of like me, my progress, my ideas, into Pisces, which is more about the collective and the faith again, but the faith that is built more on feeling the support of the universe, trusting that things will work out. So I think that's like a larger message. But of course, also if you have planets from 0 to 8 cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, you're likely to feel this energy especially strongly from July 28th until October 27th. And then if you have planets in the last 4 or 5 degrees mutable signs from 25 until the end, 30 mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, you will feel the shift possibly from October 27th until November 23rd. So let's do the deep dive into all 12 signs and see what one might expect depending on where Jupiter is in your chart. So for Aries rising, Jupiter retrograde begins in your first house, and first house deals with your physical body. So literally, if there were some ailments, inflammations, pain that you've been feeling, Jupiter going retrograde can make that subside, if that's the right way to say it. Yeah, like sort of kind of quiet, it will quiet it down a little bit. It will bring relief and more peace. Certain definitely improvement to your health, especially if you're going through something. First house deals with personal projects, with your identity, with your self-expression, with your growth and optimism and abundance. And if you have been taking on too many things and expanding into too many directions, starting a bunch of personal projects, this would be the time to slow down and figure out what is worth your time, what is worth pursuing, and what is not worth pursuing. Additionally, because first house is your appearance, it might be the time when you rethink your appearance, when you might rethink what makes you happy, what brings you joy, in which ways do you express yourself that truly correlates to your identity. And if you feel like you don't know how to proceed, if you don't quite know what makes you happy, maybe it's your cue to take a break and try to take it easy and gather some information about things that you want to pursue. Do some research. And because it retrogrades in the 12th house, I also wonder if there is some spiritual practices in your life that need attention, or your mental health maybe needs attention. Maybe you've been, with Jupiter and Aries, you could have been too focused on visible progress and visible achievements, and with Jupiter going retrograde, look within, think about your mental health. Yeah, like do you meditate? Do you go swimming? Do you exercise? Do you eat well, right? Like, are you just focused on taking care of yourself instead of pushing too much and expecting things to come to you really quickly? And if you started a project and it gets delayed, or you have to let it go for the time being, do so, as long as you end up feeling happier about yourself. For Taurus rising, Jupiter will be retrograde in the 12th house, and then it slowly goes into the 11th house. So 12th house deals with spirituality, losses, past, any self-undoing, self-defeating tendencies and behaviors. So here you might get a chance to look at what you're telling yourself, look at your guiding principles, look at how you can release certain negative habits or even certain ways of talking to yourself, especially if you're being too critical. Maybe with Jupiter being retrograde, being direct for a while, you could have made certain progress when it comes to imagination, when it comes to spirituality, maybe even traveling, moving to a foreign country. And now when Jupiter goes retrograde, you can see that progress slowing down, and maybe you have to sacrifice or release some of your aspirations for the time being, or just sort of look at them through another lens. Definitely look for ways to improve your health, look for ways to get some sort of higher wisdom, bring spiritual practice into your life. Listen to other people, because there might be certain guides important to you right now, or like people coming into your life that are significant. And because Jupiter deals with the past, and 12th house is the place of self-undoing, I also wonder if there is certain habits, certain like negative habit that you thought you kicked and you were done with, that now needs another look and needs more solid rules that you put into place. What's interesting is that Jupiter goes back into your 11th house, so some sort of close connection to people once again, some sort of close connection to spiritual projects. Maybe you're working on something spiritual or some kind of healing energy, because 12th house could be very much about you feeling isolated, or it could be about isolated people. So if there is any projects that are spiritual and healing, they can slow down, but then Jupiter goes into 11th, and I feel like you are bringing support, you're bringing help, you're connecting with other people who can be very supportive to you right now. For Gemini rising, Jupiter stations retrograde in the 11th house and then slowly moves into your 10th house. You may have to take a closer look at your hopes and dreams and your plans for the future, because that's what 11th house represents. And Jupiter in the 11th is actually Jupiter in its joy. It means that you get access to more people, especially when Jupiter was direct from May 10th until now, July 28th. Perhaps you felt like you got excited about a lot of projects, you got excited about social media, about achieving your dreams and bringing the support of other people, working with other people. And now that Jupiter goes retrograde, you have to do some maintenance and some work, right? Let's say you were planning to work with your friends and you were planning to start a podcast together. Maybe with Jupiter going retrograde, you need to make a plan, you need to sign a contract with them, you need to figure out, add more structure to the way you want to approach that group project, as well as if you're working on something personal that possibly deals with social media or anything else, you might just feel a lack of motivation, a lack of excitement about this project or about this connection with those people in your life. And it could be a lovely time to maybe think, like Jupiter and faith, maybe just think what brought you together in the first place, what makes this friendship strong, and how can you work together with other people to not only further your aims, but feel connected and feel supported and feel loved, think about people in your life and how they add to your life versus take away from it. And maybe align yourself with people who are more spiritual and more supportive of your goals. For Cancer rising, Jupiter goes retrograde in your 10th house and then slowly moves back into the 9th. This is very much like, do you need to go to school? Do you need to study something in order to further your career? Because Jupiter being direct for the last few months, starting in May, in your 10th house may have brought some kind of exciting professional developments. And maybe, you know, like it's Jupiter in Aries, maybe there were too many things that you were like, I can handle it all. I can do teaching, I can do translating, I can publish a book, I can write a novel. Two of the same, but just excitement about a lot of things. And now Jupiter goes backwards and you're sort of sorting through things and questioning what is worth pursuing, what's not pursuing. There might be certain delay to achieving your goals. There might be certain projects that appeared may sort of go away and ask you to be patient, don't get impatient, don't get frustrated if things don't immediately come your way. I find it interesting that the same day as Jupiter stations retrograde, we also have a new moon in Leo, and it's happening in your 2nd house of money. And the new moon trines Jupiter, so there is a lovely energy of professional gains, professional new beginning, financial gains, but progress is likely to be slow. Progress is likely to require some work. Ask yourself, because as I spoke about Jupiter, what I said about Jupiter in the beginning of this video, it has to do with what you want to be known for. It has to do with social expression, with your spirit, with your light. So with Jupiter being retrograde in your 10th house, ask yourself, what do you truly want to be known for? What kind of job brings satisfaction? And if you didn't care about money, what would you do? Maybe the answers to those questions will surprise you. And it's never too late to change what you do for a living. Like, you know, if you have a job that's just a ton of work nonstop and you feel exhausted and tired, maybe you need to rethink that. And the Jupiter entering the 9th is kind of like, what does this career change will bring? It could bring going back to school. It could bring becoming a teacher. Could possibly bring moving to another place. Maybe what you truly value is the time spent with family, or the time spent by the beach, swimming, surfing, and maybe your professional success wants you to move to Hawaii. Professional/personal work-life balance. What would it be? Let me know in the comments below. For Leo rising, Jupiter stations retrograde in the 9th house and then slowly moves into the 8th. If you have been traveling a lot, or if you have been excited about traveling, going on all these trips, maybe now you take a step back. You might experience delay with your travel plans. Don't get discouraged. Don't feel like that means you'll never be able to travel again. You know, let's say something happens with your paperwork, like let's say you want to go to a country that requires a visa and there's delays and there's matters you have to attend to. Maybe it's an encouragement for you to find more contentment within yourself and enjoy being in your town that you live in. There might be delay to legal matters. There might be certain educational things that you have to go over. And maybe, you know, if you are in school, maybe you have to retake an exam, something that you thought you were done with and possibly you're not. But like I said, you know, it might be something that gets taken away from you or something that is delayed. But then when Jupiter stations direct on November 23rd and onwards, especially when Jupiter enters Aries again on December 20th, I believe it's December 20th, you will get it back. So don't get frustrated. If you are writing or if you're presenting your work somehow, this might also be the time to rethink that. And 9th house is very much the bigger picture. Like, Have you been running away from your life and traveling a lot because you don't know what you want to do with your life? Do you love traveling but you don't get enough of it? So maybe you can try to incorporate more of it in your daily life by choosing a career that allows you to travel. Might be the time to question your guiding principles and your ultimate goals, right? If your job doesn't feel satisfying, if you feel like you need to get education to get you to where you want to go, take that action. Another thing too, because Jupiter retrograde represents going back, maybe you're also traveling to the place you've been to before and finding new ways to connect with people you've known in that location. Working with foreign people might get frustrated and slower, especially if you're like, interacting with foreign people professionally. And any relationships with people in other countries might also be slowing down at the time. Nothing to worry about, just enjoy the slower period of time. For Virgo rising, Jupiter begins its retrograde in the 8th house and then it enters the 7th later on. So 8th house, Jupiter retrograde. 8th house deals with our dynamics with other people. It's give and take, it's sharing, it's, I give you this piece of wood, you give me this piece of wood. So all of these kind of things that maybe when Jupiter was direct in Aries, you were like, of course I'll join this project with you. Of course I'll take this loan with you. Of course I'll move in with you. And now that Jupiter goes retrograde, you are asked to look at what's underneath, to look at it closely and maybe ask, well, you have signed up for this project, but do you want to work 10 hours every weekend to get that project done, or do you want to relax? Maybe you moved in with someone, but like, are you on the same page? Do you want kids and they don't want kids? So there might be a little bit of that, questioning whether your values align. Matters related to money might need to be addressed, money and resources and values that you share with your partner, but also financial things, right? Like if you haven't been, if you have any debts, if you have insurance payments that need to be taken care of, something you may have forgotten that you haven't invested into, might be the time. Might be like a lovely opportunity to rethink your investments and see what you're investing in. But I'm also thinking like it's Jupiter, so it's still something that is educational, uplifting, spiritual. So it can be literal finances, or it could be debts you have to other people. It could be investments into yourself and into your progress. Great time for therapy. 8th house deals with healing. In general, 8th house is the place in which we transform things. So we may transform a relationship we have with someone. We may transform a debt by paying it off. But it's also about your trust and your healing and your progress, anything that you might be holding on to that needs attention. So take time to talk to your therapist and maybe address what haven't been working for you. For Libra rising, Jupiter begins its retrograde in the 7th house and then goes into the 6th. If you have noticed a lot of progress, and please do let me know if you have, in your relationship sector, say you started dating someone, or any changes in your business sector, like you took on a new project, you got excited about something, Aries, like let's do it, let's go, go, go. Now might be the time when you start to look at it, sort of the rose-colored glasses get removed, and the newness, right? I think like that's another part of the retrograde. Like when Jupiter is direct, everything is new, everything is fascinating, the relationship is beautiful, the relationship is exciting, and you're like, sure, let's do this, let's move in together, let's travel together, let's build a home together. And then Jupiter goes retrograde and you're like, but I don't want a home in Oklahoma, let's say. Nothing against Oklahoma, I've never been there, it's just the second state that popped into my head. Didn't want to name the first state, but so questioning relationships, questioning commitments, questioning whether this relationship brings enough to you. It's not necessarily like, you know, there might be delays to relationships. There might be a need to rethink a relationship. There might also be more kind of like positive changes because maybe you connect to your partner on a more spiritual level. Maybe things slow down in terms of progress between you and it's not as literal as obvious, but maybe it's more quiet, spiritual, deep connection. Your partner might be going through a retrograde because planets in the 7th house often represent partners. Maybe they have to move back somewhere. If you're not living together, maybe they have to move back to their hometown, and that sort of affects your relationship, right? That would be like an example, one example. Or they have to go back to the old job, just some kind of change that they're going through. People from the past returning into your life is a possibility as well, although they don't have to be romantic partners. They can also be teachers, guides, mentors, clients, sort of making you look back and rethink something from the past. Could be romantic, could be maybe going for another try with your ex, or maybe even going for someone who's not quite your type. That's a possibility with Jupiter retrograde in the 7th house. You're sort of more open to dating people who don't fit the image. And then it goes into the 6th house, so definitely works for business matters, right? Like if this for you means, like I gave my example, right? Like I'm gonna start selling products, candles specifically, and then Jupiter goes retrograde and might mean I'd have to rethink my strategy, my packaging, my labeling, anything like that, right? I'll keep you guys upgraded about my progress. So yeah, so sort of like it goes back into the 6th house, and 6th house deals with work and commitment and service and dedication. So regardless of whether it's a relationship matter or it's a business matter, you will have to rethink your strategy as Jupiter retrogrades into the 6th house. For Scorpio rising, the retrograde begins in the 6th and then goes into the 5th. And this could be very much like, okay, time to take care of my health. My health is not limitless. I'm a human being with, you know, like I can break, I can hurt myself, I can hurt my back by rushing too much, taking on too many things. Like Jupiter in the 6th could have really made you go extra hard at work or in your personal life. And how can you change those things? How can you take better care of yourself? Because Jupiter goes into the 5th, and like, especially if you're planning to have a child, you might be rethinking your health for that specific reason. If you're planning to have a kid in the future, or if you're freezing your eggs, right? This is also kind of like, okay, I'm thinking of taking action when it comes to children with Jupiter going back into the 5th house. And it involves my health. So how can I take better care of myself? How can I let go of bad habits? Just take it easy, take it slow, take a break from working too much, and improve my health in order to prepare me for that next chapter that deals with children, or even to prepare you to having more joy in your life, because that is something that 5th house represents, and Jupiter is going from the house of service, commitment, dedication, work, to the house of fun and romance and creativity and children. So you're kind of like creating more fun in your life, asking for more, asking the universe for abundance and success by manifesting a healthier version of yourself. For Sag rising, the retrograde begins in the 5th house and then it slowly retrogrades in your 4th. I did a video on Chiron retrograde, check it out, because you know Jupiter is retrograding in the same house as Chiron for you. So there's a little bit of overlap. But if you have been dating a lot with Jupiter direct in your 5th house, if you have been really focused on romance, putting yourself out there, maybe taking on creative hobbies, going out dancing, just like having more fun, When Jupiter stations retrograde, you become more introspective about the things that you do, things that you spend your time doing. You might also be more introspective about the people you're dating. If you have just started a new relationship and things are looking exciting and great, Jupiter going retrograde might be like, well, is this really the person you want to be with? Like, yes, they're fun and you can stay up late and the sex is great, but they don't want children, or they don't want to travel, or they're not ambitious and they have no income. You know, like certain really serious issues or any challenges might reveal themselves. There might be relationships from the past on your mind or just reappearing in your life because Jupiter is retrograde in the 5th house. Could be a good time if you feel like a lack of desire to date, if you feel lack of creative inspiration, maybe it's your time to allow yourself to take it easy and not necessarily push it extra hard. Like, try to go back, try to think of what brought you joy when you were little, and perhaps, you know, maybe bring some of that into your life. Your child might be the subject of this retrograde. Maybe your child needs to retake an exam, or they need to go back to school they once used to go to, and you are handling a lot of that. So there might just be a bit of frustration, delays, and matters related to romance, creativity, and children that need a second look and more attention. And also just looking at the big picture and asking what is here for a long time and what is here for a good time, and which one do you want? I'm matching my cup. For Capricorn risings, Jupiter will be retrograding in the 4th house, and you can expect delays and maybe certain questions and matters related to home and family. Let's say you're moving, let's say you are building a home, you're renovating, and this could be the time when things slow down, when you start to question whether this place or this home or this project is what makes you happy. And maybe like you're moving back to a place you once used to live. But definitely if things are delayed, if things are slow, take it easy. Think of whether the home you're in and the place you live in, whether it makes you feel secure. And the same goes for your familial relationships, literal family or kind of adoptive family, maybe your friends who feel like family. This might be the time to sort of just like think of how can you add more comfort and peace and security into your life. With Chiron being retrograde here, you might be also very much healing the past and releasing the old dynamics. Jupiter is about faith, Jupiter is about growth, and it's about expansion, and you might be looking at what kind of relationships and what kind of place of living, what kind of town and city suits you better. Like, let's say you live in, I don't know, LA, you live in California, and then you feel like you actually are more aligned. Maybe you go and visit New York and you feel like New York is actually more of your place. So there might be a little bit of that. And on a more spiritual inner level, like Jupiter being retrograde in the 4th also kind of draws your attention to the past, to your childhood, to your early life. You know, a home that you once used to live in, and makes you be more introspective, maybe be more melancholic. Maybe you're interested in starting a family history project, painting a family tree, something like that. And there are lessons there. But not everything that you've learned as a kid is necessary for you to keep. So think what's yours and think what's inherited, and how can you separate yourself from the past, and how can you separate yourself from the misguidedness of your family, or the challenges and difficulties that they have experienced. And even your own challenges and difficulties. They are here to teach you something, and they don't really define you. You're so much more than them. For Aqua rising, Jupiter goes retrograde in the 3rd house, and then it retrogrades into the 2nd house. So I wonder what skills you have, Aqua rising, that can bring you money. What skills you have that can make you financially more secure, or even make you feel more valued and more confident. Because the retrograde starts in the 3rd house. 3rd house deals with communication, siblings, short trips, your technology, your car, your devices, and your hands. Anything you do, any applied knowledge with your hands. So with Jupiter being direct, maybe you have been making progress, maybe you have been studying something, maybe you have been considering starting a blog, buying technology for things that you're interested in, or just like learning about it. And now Jupiter goes retrograde, and you may need to reevaluate what is, and it's also the house of your schedule, right? So Jupiter being the 3rd house in Aries may have overloaded your schedule and your communications and your interactions. Here you're doing a bit of revision. You're looking at your commitments, at your relationship with your siblings, and you're sort of questioning, yeah, like commitments, relationships, daily life, daily struggles, and like, are all of these things necessary? Are they important to your life? You may be looking at your ideas and sort of going through them with a fine-tooth comb and thinking of like, well, you have all these things on your list, but what can be cut off? What can be changed? Maybe they don't all make you happy. Connecting with things that really do make you happy, connecting with things that make you feel joyful, connecting with things that you enjoy doing. Like, I have an Aqua rising friend who is an accountant, but also is a yoga teacher. We haven't spoken in a while, so I need to check. Maybe she's fully yoga teacher now. But like something like that. If you want to become more spiritual, if you want to start a blog, if you want to start a business, but you're holding yourself back, maybe this is your call and your sign to start slow, to make a plan, to start by getting rid of things and people and dynamics that are unhealthy for you, that are holding you back. Even realizing that certain relationships, like with your neighbors or your siblings, that are not healthy, and maybe needing to express it, needing to have important conversations, could be significant. You might find yourself getting involved with a past idea, sort of dancing with a past idea, and giving it another life. A sibling might be going through a retrograde. Maybe they're moving away, maybe they are going back to school. Something in their life might be changing, and something in your schedule is likely to change. This is a great time for, like I said, get rid of the time wasters, make a plan, journal, meditate, take sort of like, learn a skill that makes you happy, or better, a skill that you have that you really enjoy. Finally, for Pisces rising, Jupiter retrograde starts off in your 2nd house, so the house of money and values, and then it retrogrades into your 1st house of identity. Something quite literally, if you have been making a lot of money, or you have been really financially oriented, and just maybe, like some of you may be looking for a job, or like rethinking your finances, with Jupiter going retrograde in the 1st house, returning to Pisces. It's the literal tension between making money, feeling stable, and doing something you feel passionate about. I think that tension might present itself right now, because with Jupiter being direct from May 10th until now, July 28th, you may have been heavily focused on what brings you money. You may have been like, okay, go. Like, I need money, I need to feel self-reliant, I need to feel stable, I need to have enough to travel, whatever. But now Jupiter goes retrograde, and you're like, well, maybe I've done it, or maybe I haven't done it. But could it not be about that? Could it not be about making the bank, but instead about choosing something that brings me a little less money, but still makes me feel secure, but makes me feel appreciated, and utilizes the most of my skill set, and gives me the most inner happiness and satisfaction. Try to focus, like money, of course, with Jupiter retrograde in the second house, the money that you gained with Jupiter direct might need to be given back, or might need to be invested, might need to be spent somehow. And try to focus less on spending this money, because I mentioned in the beginning of this video, the money that gets taken away from you can then be gifted back to you, maybe with interest and better return on investment. But try to focus more on your worthiness as a human being, and maybe figure out professional changes and personal changes that can showcase your ambition and your talent, more so the talent than ambition, but showcase your gifts instead of doing things that bring you more money. Let me know if this resonates. I hope this video was helpful for all of you guys, and I hope you have a good Jupiter retrograde. Like I said, nothing to worry about, just the time when the Jupiterian energy is kind of on a yellow light, not red, not green, but the time to rethink, slow down, and take it easy. Enjoy this retrograde. Talk to you soon. Bye.